Well, hello and welcome. Today we are at ACAP, which is the African Caribbean Achievement Project, which is in Bradford, and we're here today for a really special occasion. We are working towards the ultimate event, which is at the end of October as part of Black History Month, and this part is called the Windrush Sound System Remembering the Mandem. And to start off, under that, guys, we have Claude Hopper Hendrickson, who hails from Leeds and was part of one of the pioneering sound systems of Leeds. Welcome, Claude.
How you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm fine. So we've come here today to talk, to reminisce.
Yep.
And to discuss the place and importance of sound systems for young people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? So, let's just get straight on with it.
Okay.
So, what was the inspiration for you and your members, the sound system members, your brethren, the brotherhood, to set up a sound system?
Thank you, Sharon. And thank you to ACAP for hosting this project. Hopefully we're going to get around Leeds, Bradford, Birmingham, Manchester, Leicester, Sheffield, and meet some sound systems. Inspiration. I suppose it's a negative and a positive. The things that pushed me to creating a sound system was actually racism as a funny thing.
Okay. Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, we used to be going to the discos at school, and it seems the discotheques around at the time, and they were very white events, and we would be listening to pop music, so we'd be listening to Slade, Shawadi Wadi.
Oh, I remember all that.
We'd be listening to the sweet, pop music, and then obviously we'd be listening to Michael Jackson, James Brown's, if it got into the charts, the Temptations, the Stylistics, them kinds of things. And and we used to go to the discos, and after the discos, every time we'd be fighting with white boys. We'd be fighting.
Why was that? Why?
I think we were the new generation. I'm of that generation, that first generation that was born here, and the people of here didn't know how to deal with us. They didn't know, and part of the reason as well for me was that the white girls actually liked the black boys, and so the white boys didn't like the fact that the white girls were starting to like the black boys. So anyway, so we needed to create something for ourselves, and in Leeds we had a sound that went by the name of King of Sounds. And that was this old guy that used to dress up in a uniform and have his double decks and play at shebeens and the shebeens and them kind of your parents' parties. So it was about us doing something for ourselves. So we set out on trying to build sound systems. And then inspiration for me came from sound systems like Coxsone, sound systems like Mafia Tone, Quaker City, Studio City, Fat Man. Seeing and hearing them sounds just heartened me and lifted me.
So you travelling throughout the UK then?
Yeah. Originally, coming to Bradford, for example, I used to come to Bradford to a club called Afro, where a DJ used to play there, and he was playing our music, and so it was about empowering us to play our music. So that was where the inspiration came from. It was lots of little things. Racism played a massive tool in identification.
So that's what was actually giving you and the boys drive to do this?
Yeah.
So did you know you could do it, or was it a case of, like you said, you'd been around, seen a few people? Because I'm quite interested in the technical side as well.
No.
Did you know where to go to buy all these things?
No, we didn't know. I think when we set up, we had one speaker, one amplifier, and one turntable.
Okay.
Sound system, and then it just grew and grew to all the boxes that we ended up with. But originally, one speaker and a deck and an amplifier was enough, because you could get some music out of it. And then when you saw the other sounds, you saw, woo, it was like, you know, break it down, top section, mid-range, bass. So yeah, it was like that. Yeah, yeah.
And were you making them yourselves?
Yep, everything. Back in the day, everything we built ourselves, except the amplifiers, of course.
Yeah.
But the speakers, we used hot pokers to dig a hole in the wood and cut round. And yeah, we built everything. Because we couldn't, at that time, there was a sound in Leeds called Hunter Smith, which was part of Jumbo Records.
Right. Okay.
And he was also an inspiration, but he had H&H equipment. He had H&H equipment,
Right.
and we couldn't afford to go into a shop and buy speakers, so we had to build everything from scratch.
Great.
Yeah.
Because I'm starting to get a picture now of the time, you know, because funds and things like that would have been. I mean, were you all working men at the time? You know,
We were kids. I mean,
difficult for
oh
you?
no, when I started out in my sound and we set up, which is obviously one of the questions you're going to ask me.
Yeah.
I was only 14 years old.
Right. Okay. Well,
Now-
we'll get into that
yeah,
later
yeah,
on. So, as you were saying now with racism and things. So at the time, what year did? And by the way, what was the sound
Yeah,
called?
yeah. Originally, we were called Dragon Hi-Fi, and Dragon Hi-Fi we were part of a group that was called the Black Dragons, and we were a group that used to go out fighting white guys.
Sorry.
So the truth of the matter be known, because, you know, it was 40 years ago, and that group, we were like, in reality, we were like a gang. And the gang created the sound system, because it was actually
Right.
part of the reason was creating the sound system was to give us something different to do other than going out and fighting. So our sound originally was called Dragon Hi-Fi, and then we teamed up with another sound which was called Janati Exeter, and we created a sound called Channel 1. And that sound was the first sound we kind of properly launched, Channel 1. And that was because there used to be a record label from Jamaica called Channel 1.
There was, yes.
So we called our first sound Channel 1 in Leeds. Yeah.
Right,
And that was
okay.
set up
In
1974.
and you were how old at that time, if you don't mind me asking?
I was 14.
You was
I was
14.
I was one of the
Wow.
youngest members of the sound.
Okay.
And part of the reason that sound also set up was that one of our members of the group, the Black Dragons, he'd been to Jamaica on holiday. And when he came back from Jamaica, he brought a suitcase full of records,
Wow, wish I'd
absolutely
been
packed. You know, with like, because buying records back in them days was what you did on a Saturday afternoon.
It was,
Everybody
yeah.
went to town,
Yeah.
you met at the record shop,
We
you bought
did.
maybe 2 records.
Yeah.
Well, he brought like, I think there was 8 of us in the group. He bought like 8 of every record back, so that each one of us had our own copy of the record. And
Yeah.
he brought back, it must have been a good couple of 100 records. And that kick-started the sound system, because now we had all of this music.
Right. So you had the
that was-
members, you had the equipment, and now you had the music.
No, we
Oh.
didn't have the equipment. We got the music first.
Right.
Then we went after the equipment.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Okay. So we're in the context now, and we're in the early 70s, are we?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So how did the name come about? You were talking earlier about Channel 1 because of the inspiration there, and we've heard other names. So how did you come up with the name, and what was the name
Well,
that you stuck with?
we ended up with a name called Sparta, because what happened is when we joined the sounds together, and then the older guys were kind of leaving the sound because they were a bit older than us, and they got jobs and they started to have families. So we came up with the name Sparta. We hunted around for a name, and the name Sparta came out of, we did some research, and just shocker, the Zulu warriors used to have a stabbing spear, a very short stabbing spear for close combat, and that was called a Sparta spear. So when we found out, so we were doing some research, so we called ourselves Sparta, which is actually a Zulu warrior's short stabbing spear.
So did that represent kind of the conflict that you'd experienced in the time and everything?
No, really. I think that was us getting conscious, and we started looking to Africa because we was hearing that out of the music and consciousness. So when we were looking for a name, we thought Africa. We thought we was hearing about Zulu warriors. We were hearing about that kind of stuff. And Jashaka was out there and other names were out there. Jungle Man was out there. Some of the names that were out there. So we went for Sparta. So it was part of that consciousness era, because sounds also with the music we was now listening to, which wasn't popular music, was making us very much conscious. Right. You know, Fred Locks and some of them artists, and Dennis Brown and Bunny Wailer and them, and Peter Tosh and them kind of people. They were making us very conscious.
They were.
So we started tentatively looking to Africa. So that's how we got our name.
So by this time now, was there any transition in you as people? And I'm talking about the way you looked.
Oh God, yeah. Rasta started to come home to us. You're now around 1977, 78, and I'm like 18 now. Yeah, and we were starting to locks up. We were starting to dress a certain type of way. We were getting more into the depth of the music, because back then nearly most of the music was conscious, even if it was Big U, Roy, Just Stitch, Jawush, them kinds of people. Even the singers were singing conscious, the DJs were DJing consciously. So and then in the background you still had people like Jimmy Cliff, Desmond Dekker, and it was conscious music that was coming out. So a lot of that was falling on our ears, and we was absorbing that. And as well, the Rasta movement was moving
very much so
from like Manchester. It was, the vibe was coming and started. So yeah, it got very conscious. I think that from 77-ish to maybe the mid 80s, it got very deep.
It did.
Especially within the sound system world.
Excellent, wonderful. This is painting a fabulous picture of social history. We talked earlier about how and why you came together as a sound. And how many of you were there in the sound?
In the sound, there was I think it was about 11 of us.
Wow!
Yeah, the numbers grow, because once the sound starts picking up, the friends of friends start coming round the sounds. And remember, we joined 2 sounds together, so there was about 11 of us.
Yes, of course.
There was about 11 of us in our sound.
And so these 11 people, they're in the sound. Have they all got roles? Does everybody have something to do?
Yeah. Obviously, there's carrying boxes that we all have to do. There's not just box carriers. All of us have to carry boxes. But yeah, there's the selector, the person that actually selects the music that's played on the night. That you'd have a number of guys that buy the music. You have the operator, the guy that plays the sound and wires up the sound. And then you would have your DJs. They would be the ones that really talk to the crowd of people and sing J and DJ to the crowd of people and entertain the crowd of people. And then you've got, like I said, your box carriers, but it's everybody box carriers. So I don't want guys out there that felt being a box carrier was a negative, because
or
many
a lower position.
No.
Yeah,
because,
crucial actually.
It was because we couldn't get the sound to venues if we didn't have people to carry the sound. So yeah, so they were the kind of roles we took. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, so now you've got your name, you've got your sound together. So now you said earlier about the music coming from Jamaica, but you can always go to Jamaica. So where were you getting your music from?
Yeah, well, like I said, in Leeds we had Jumbo's Records.
So you could get your conscious music?
Oh yeah, Jumbo's was a big supplier of Hunter Smith.
A lot of
as an English guy, he had some big connections to Jamaica, because he'd been to Jamaica.
Yeah.
And then we would travel, and then in Leeds we had another guy called Johnny and Fox's record shop. And then we had Sir Yankee opening his record shop. And then we would go out, we would travel to London to Gangsterville, we would travel to London to Dub Vendor, we would travel to London to go to Mr. Palmer's record shop. There was various, and then we'd go to Birmingham, we'd go to Birmingham to a Zion's record shop, Don Christie's record shop. So for us, London and Birmingham were the key places. From Leeds, we went. We did, you know, we looked in Leeds and then we went further, because one of the things about sound systems, it was always about competition, who could play a record that somebody else didn't have. So you would look to go to records where, you know, if you was playing a sound system, they hadn't been to buy records.
Right.
So yeah, it was like that. So London and Birmingham were my core places for buying records.
So essentially then, that's what sound systems was about.
Yeah.
Out-competing your competitor.
Yeah.
Through the music.
Yeah, it was all about...
And what else? How loud you were, or...
Yeah, the quality, originally it was about quality of sound system, not about how loud sound system was. It was about quality.
Yeah.
You know, your quality top section, your quality mid-range, your quality bass. It was about quality. And then the next thing was, yes, about you wanting to be able to play a tune that the other sound couldn't play, but the crowd liked. And some sounds, you know, Matthew Tone and Coxon and Quaker City and them, they had odd records that only they had, because of some, and they became what we call dub plates now. Right. But they would have a record, and you know, if you go to Shaka to hear, he's going to play a number of records that you're not going to hear nobody else play, and then you try and find that record, because people used to, it was funny, people would black out the names on records so that
right, yes,
when they were playing the record, people might look over, but they can't see the name of the record because they don't want you to go out and next time play that record against them. So it was competitive. It was about bringing new music and new vibes. You know, sometimes you'd bring a new record and you'd play it and it just wouldn't click with people. And then another record, which was the same brand new record, you play it and for some reason it just click. So yeah, it was always about finding what the latest word on the street was, what the latest tune on the street was. It's very much like, for those who don't know, if you've watched Babylon, the movie, that is an exact typical thing of what it was about. A lot of what's in Babylon is very true. It's
so it was an authentic,
yeah, very authentic. Yeah, Babylon as a movie is all the other things.
One of my favorites.
Yeah. It's a very authentic movie. So yeah, it was like that. Yeah.
Okay, so now you've got the music, you've got the sound, everybody's on board, you're being competitive, you're moving around, going to places. So where did you play? Where were the sort of venues?
Yeah, well, originally it was like, I think the first venue was a classroom in a school, you know, or somebody's basement, because you test your sound in basements. Then we got to play in a local school. We asked the teacher to let us use a classroom, and then we moved on to a little youth club in Leeds called Studley Grange. They had like a garage at the back of this nursery, so we started playing in there. Then we got to the Chapeltown Community Centre, and then it kicked off. Chapeltown Community Centre, we used school halls, we used the Astoria Ballroom. And it's quite funny back then, even when you used to go to some of the big sound system events, they were in glamorous ballrooms, you know, they were in big town halls like Brixton Town Hall, or in Birmingham in Digbeth Hall. And in Manchester, they had a place in Manchester, fantastic posh place. But, you know, the wires going all over. But, yeah, so we started locally where we could, basements, people's houses, community centres, schools. They were the places we first played. And then we would get invited to play in another place. So we'd come to Bradford, for example, and play at Green Lane, which was a school.
It was, yes.
So we were playing in Green Lane School, and then there was Textile Hall and Scouts Hall and these kinds of places. But they were the places that we played. So we went to Bradford, we went to Huddersfield, we played in Venn Street, we went to Sheffield to play, we went to Leicester.
I'm looking at some of these that you've got here, you know, and your name is on here. This one's in, that one's in Bradford.
Yeah, that one's in Bradford. Yeah, that one's in Leeds. That's a Leeds event. But yeah, so yeah, we played, as far as we were concerned, we went to Leicester, we played in Birmingham once at a party, we played in London. So for me, that's what it was about. Your sound started small and it grew, and as people heard about you, they would invite you to play at different places. So yeah, so we played, you know, in a number of places.
So you're how old around this time then? I'm just trying to get an idea of the time when it was.
Oh well, now I'm like in my mid-20s.
So that's
I'm
what,
like that's
80s?
like 80, 84, 85,
So the
86,
sound's been going
87.
how long now at this
The
time?
sound had been going in a fashion since, call it, 77. So by 87 we'd been going 10 years.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, 87. And again, as the sounds was going on, the vibe was changing, more people were getting into sounds. And you'll see by some of the lists that we've created, some towns had mega numbers of sound systems.
They did. I've seen the list. That's great. That's fantastic. Okay, so we've talked about where you played in community centres and the clubs. You mentioned earlier that you played locally and you went out of town as well. You got as far as Birmingham, London, and all of that. Was that difficult to do? I mean, going into somebody else's town and playing. I know you said it was by invitation, but did you ever come across any kind of conflict or anything?
Hostility.
Hostility, yeah.
Yeah, no, obviously if you're going to play a sound in their local town, the numbers of people that are in the event are usually the local sound heavy. So so it's actually about the challenge is to try and win over the crowd from the local sound.
Yeah.
So obviously the local people would come and listen to that sound, but then if you play a record that is up there, you know, the loyalty would come to you because people love music. So if you played a really vibey record, you know, you'd hear the shouting for you. So the local sound would be like, ooh. So yeah, it was. So I mean, coming to Bradford, you know, you'd come and play, and they'd have the local sound. But then, there's a bit of kind of hype because the out of town sound actually brings a new dimension.
It does. It does.
And the girls actually like new sound men as opposed to local. That's another conversation. It was that you was winning over and you was testing yourself, you know, because you knew you could play music.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a bit like football where there's a home team and there's an away team. And the away team comes and plays at your ground, but the away team wins the match.
Right.
You know, and that's how it is. You know, it was like that.
You could earn a lot of respect.
You could earn a lot of respect, yeah, and you could earn a lot of animosity because the guys, nobody likes to lose.
No.
And sounds don't like in front of their home crowd to lose to the away team. And I suppose in the future events that we're going to do around this, we're going to talk about the animosity that sound systems created, because I do think there was a sense of togetherness that sound systems created.
It did bring unity, it did.
But then in the competition, it became very personal, and so there's a negative side to it. I think sound systems, as well as bringing the black communities together, it also helped divide them, because you would, in a town, for example, you could have 10 sound systems in one town. And now some of the guys will stop talking to the other guys in the other sound system because they played with them and they beat them. So actually it went deeper than that. And sound systems, I mean, one of the reasons I ended up leaving sound systems was because, just to bring it up, and we'll talk about this when we do more of these events, was because people I went to school with, I grew up with, we were stopping talking now because of this sound system thing. It became too personal. We took it to another level.
Because people were just really passionate about it, though?
It was passion, but that passion turned into jealousy. That passion turned into negativity. You know, for example, so you had guys in Bradford that didn't like guys in Leeds because they were from a different sound system. You had guys in Leeds that didn't like guys in Manchester because they were from a different sound system. You had guys in Manchester that probably didn't like guys from London or Birmingham because they were in another sound system. They'd clashed. But it didn't get as violent or as negative as it got in later years, where people were actually, sound systems were actually fighting. And our members that supported that sound system were fighting.
with
So, but
others.
again, I'd like to keep that till another time.
Yeah. Okay, so we've painted a really nice picture now. A nice episode of social history.
Yeah.
And to close, what's happening now in terms of not just what you were doing as part of the sound system, but the sound system culture as a whole?
I think the sound system culture has moved on. I personally left sound system and went into radio. So I built a radio station because.
And what was that called?
People's FM. Originally it was called WYBC, West Yorkshire Broadcasting Company, or We're Young, Black and Conscious. But now I run,
do actually remember
for 25 years I've run People's FM. So for me, I moved sound system because what I thought about sound systems were only as good as the people that came to that venue. So only them people could hear it. A radio allowed you to get into people's houses and all over the place.
It's a different type of broadcasting,
and as well, it allowed that confrontation that came about from the sound systems. Man didn't like you. So if you was playing at a dance, I could be playing at a dance with, say, Coxon, let's say. Certain man wouldn't come to the dance because my sound's playing. They're not coming. So, yeah, that's how bad it got. Sounds wouldn't support other sounds.
Right.
So with the radio now, it gave me the power of getting into people's houses, even if they wouldn't come to the dance. They wouldn't come to the dance. And as well, to add a point, which might not go out on this part, might not go out on the room, but guys didn't want their girlfriends coming to your dance. So guys would tell the girl, no, you're not going to that dance. Oh, no. Because it was a bit of a group. They were scared.
Yeah, it was.
Like we'd come to Bradford and we'd play and, you know, the Bradford guys would be getting a bit spousey now because the Bradford girls were starting to date Leeds guys. So that became an issue.
Right.
So so I got into radio, which was where I took it. What I'd say about sound systems, how it's gone on, the sound systems have got bigger and better and more powerful and all of, well, not so much
what's the
powerful.
current one in Leeds? Is it Zulu Swarm or something?
Yeah, there's a few, but the animosity, you know, that negative sounds of part of sound systems has grown as well. So when you go to sound dances now, you hear them cussing your mother and cussing this, and they're saying things that are very personal. You know, you can't go into in our time, you couldn't go into a dance and be cussing somebody's mother because that would create a fight. So I think it's drifted in a bit of for me, and some of the music now, it's not as conscious. There is conscious music, there's some brilliant conscious artists out there, but the DJs who set the scene as well, the DJs are different, and the way, so I think sounds they've grown with a new generation, but I feel they lost their way a little bit, you know, and like with this event, it was, as we're winding up, it was a bit to remember the man them that was in sound systems for the consciousness, for the development, for the uniting of people, for the positive energy. But as we talk about sound system, there was positive energy, but let's not hide away from some of the negative energy that actually help divide communities and not bring us together. You know, even in Leeds now, you have man that were from different sounds that still don't really talk to man. 30 years later, and when you sit down with them, it's all because they played in a dance with them and they beat them in that dance. They never got over it. It is that deep. It's a bit like how football, you have man that support Liverpool, a man that support Manchester, a man that support Leeds United, a man that support Bradford City, a man that support Huddersfield City. And because they support Liverpool, they ain't going to go into a sound system with a man that supports Manchester United. It's not happening. That's how deep it got. I mean, and sometimes when we talk about the man them, they don't talk about that side of it, but it was deep. So yeah.
So do you still play in a sound system now?
I still play out. I still have equipment. I play at events, mainly as a radio DJ.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you could say the radio became my sound system.
broadcast,
That is
yeah.
my sound system. So I took my sound system. So now, like we was on the radio on Sunday night, I have people listening in Jamaica, people listening in St. Kitts, people listening in New York, people listening in China, people listening in
Brilliant.
Germany. So the radio is my sound system. I've taken it to that level. That's where I've taken it.
Excellent. Fantastic. I've thoroughly enjoyed that piece of social history. So I'd like to thank you, Claude Hopper Hendrickson. My name is Sharon John Baptiste, and I am finished.